Welcome to our Center for Pedestrian and Bicyclist Safety webinar for November. My name is Nick Frenchak. I'm a professor in the Civil Engineering Department at the University of New Mexico and also the director of the Center for Pedestrian and Bicyclist Safety. Just a little bit about our center here, and then we'll jump into the presentation. So our center is a University Transportation Center supported by USDOT. We're led out of the University of New Mexico here. And we've also got San Diego State, Berkeley, University of Tennessee, Knoxville, and University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee on the team. We have a bunch of stuff going on. So we've got our webinar series, as you all know. We've also got a newsletter, so you can check out our website, pedbikesafety.org, and go to the bottom and sign up for the newsletter. And we've also got probably about 70 research projects that are either completed or ongoing at this point. So you can also go to our website and check all of that out. Okay, so without further ado, let's get into today's presentation. So I'll introduce our speakers and we'll jump into it. Okay, so we have two speakers today, Heidi Simon and Ravina John. Heidi Simon joined Smart Growth America in February 2023 as the Director of Thriving Communities. Heidi brings over 10 years of experience working in advocacy, communications, and programming related to mobility, with an emphasis in active transportation. She begins this work with the pedestrian advocacy organization America She began this work with the pedestrian advocacy organization America Walks, and has focused her career on addressing mobility independence through the creation of safe, active, and accessible places to move and travel. Ravina John is a senior program associate on the Thriving Communities team. She informs best practices and research, works to build local and state capacity, and captures the ongoing story of complete streets. She previously worked as a civil engineer supporting municipalities in the upper Midwest with stormwater quality management and flood mitigation. So without further ado, Heidi and Ravina, thanks for being here, and the floor is yours.
Thanks, and thanks for having us. Welcome, everybody. And I'm looking forward to chatting with all of you today about something that is very near and dear to our hearts at Smart Growth America, which is the pop-up or quick build demonstration, and sharing a little bit about our experiences with them and what we've learned, hopefully, that will inspire you to think about how they might be a strategy in your own work as you're addressing pedestrian bicycle safety and safety for all road users. For those of you who are not familiar with Smart Growth America, we are a national nonprofit that works to support communities on their path to becoming healthy, prosperous, and resilient, no matter where they are or what that might look like for that specific community. We do that through technical assistance, research, and advocacy, including managing the National Complete Streets Coalition, which is something that my team works on and manages. I want to do a quick plug before we get into our content today that Transportation Camp, which is hosted by Smart Growth America and Transportation for America, is back for 2026. So if you're going to be in DC for TRB in January, please consider joining us. This is the Saturday before. It's a lot of fun. It is chaos, it is joy, it is learning, it is getting together with all your favorite transportation nerds in one place to share ideas and talk next steps. So I hope you will consider joining us. Nick did a great job introducing us, so I'm not going to spend much time here, but just say that Ravina and I are so excited to be with you. Ravina and I have worked together on a number of states doing this program, and she's going to share some of the direct experiences that we've seen through the Complete Streets Leadership Academy, which I will define in a second here. But first, we want to know, how many of you have completed a quick build demonstration, also known as tactical urbanism, pop-up, those temporary street design changes? We want to know, have you done it and what did it look like? How did it go? Complete the poll on your screen. We'll leave that up for a few seconds. Feel free to drop in the chat if you have any more colorful experiences you want to share, any reflections, any examples, things that you have learned or experienced through quick build demonstrations. And again, we'll leave the poll up for another second or two. And then I can't see the responses, so I will leave it to you to determine when it would be best to close it. I can probably check all three of those in terms of how quick build went. And then I'm not seeing the results, so you might have to come off mute and let us know how folks voted.
You should be able to
Good.
follow that link in the chat.
Let me. It says I'm not the host.
And so
Give me a minute and I will sort this out.
Okay.
I can see the results here. Should I read them off to you?
Yes, please.
Okay. So have you or your community completed a quick build project? We got 54%, 21 responses yes, 41% no, 5% not sure. And if you answered yes to question one, how did the project go? We got a lot of people that said great. 24% said great. 67% said okay, but could have been better. 10% said we shall never speak of it again.
Awesome. Thanks, folks, for playing along. Honestly, that 67% who said, and there it is. Awesome. Okay, but could have been better. That could have been better, I think, is sometimes the sweet spot for quick builds because you want it to be a learning experience. You want to have to kind of iterate on it and do it again. So thanks for playing along. We love quick builds here at Smart Growth America. And I will get into the why and how of it. First is that far too many of our environments look like the images that you are seeing on your screen. They are environments that have not been designed to support walking and biking. They are unsafe, inaccessible, uncomfortable for far too many of our community members. And I would argue for the people in the vehicles, they are also not the best experience to be driving around. The numbers bear this out. This data comes from a report that we do here at SGA every other year called Dangerous by Design, which looks at the national pedestrian safety trends from across the US. Stay tuned. We'll have an updated version coming out in the summer of 2026. But what we're seeing is a dramatic and devastating rise in pedestrian fatalities since 2010. And even though they might be starting to level off slightly, which is hopeful. We have lots of work to do before we get to anywhere that is near acceptable or close to the progress that we were seeing, 10, 15 years ago. In the 101 largest metro areas, which are the spaces that we look at, we also know that 2/3 of all traffic deaths occur on state-owned roads. So not only do we know who is dying, but we also know where they are dying. And that means that we can focus our resources and our strategies on those spaces where we are going to be able to get the biggest bang for our buck in terms of getting close to zero traffic fatalities. So with that in mind, we want to make sure that we are thinking about how we are working with state DOTs, how we are targeting those resources to chip away at the 66% of fatalities occurring on the roads that they own and maintain. Local policies and design guides, the hard work of those champions and advocates at the ground level do not apply to state-owned facilities. And oftentimes it is difficult to try and collaborate with folks who are part of a huge institution, a large system that might be more comfortable, we'll say, relying on precedent and traditional engineering methods and not as in tune with some of the innovation or emerging best practices that local leaders, community advocates would like to see adopted on roads that are too often serving as main streets or network connections, while also trying to do double duty as state-owned arterials. At the end of the day, what we really want to challenge ourselves to do is rethink how we design our streets. And that's for local streets and state streets as well. But this really gets at the heart of how we're going to address the pedestrian safety crisis. It includes changing every time that we touch a street. It's the planning and designing, it's the operation and the maintenance, so that we are considering safety and accessibility and the convenience of all roadway users, especially those most vulnerable, and that we are prioritizing resources to address the greatest need based on the data. And this entire thing is set on not only doing a project here and a project there, although admittedly for this webinar, we will be looking at specific individual projects, but we really want to change how we address transportation as a default. That usually starts with changing our policies, the foundation of how our communities are choosing where to build, how to build, what to measure, what success looks like. And that is true at the state level as well. These policies should hopefully inform practices. So standards, design guides, all of that really informs the day-to-day that we see of our staff, which will then result, as you guessed, into the individual projects. But it's not just enough to focus on a project here and a project there. We really want to be looking at the network as a whole. My team specifically looks at Complete Streets, as probably you can guess by managing the National Complete Streets Coalition. And one of the things that we talk about is that not every street needs to be everything for everybody. I'm not looking to have every single piece of infrastructure on every single road, but we want to make sure that whether you are walking, biking, taking transit, or driving, that you have a safe and convenient and enjoyable route to get to where you need and want to go, whether or not those routes overlap or intersect with one another. And one of the ways that we have found at Smart Growth America to help kickstart, be a catalyst for this work, is through quick build demonstrations. As we talked about at the beginning, these are temporary street design changes to address safety and connectivity. They are used to do any number of things, and they have many, many benefits that we could get into here. But at the heart of it, it's meant to bring people together to start the conversation and to actually act on what we are seeing and hearing in our communities. One of the things that we really want to do is stop planning and start doing, because we know that every day that we wait to implement some of these design changes, people are dying on our roads. And it's time to say enough is enough. In 2023, with all of this in mind, Smart Growth America launched the Complete Streets Leadership Academy with 4 states. It has grown since then, and Ravina is going to talk a little bit about our most recent experiences, but I want to take a minute to set the groundwork of what the program is and some of the lessons and trends that we are seeing across different states. Again, hoping that you can take this back to your own work, whether you are at the state level or at the local level, thinking about how to collaborate with those at the state. Our Complete Streets Leadership Academy combines 3 key elements: virtual sessions, an in-person workshop, and a demonstration project. So the cohort is always working on that quick build demonstration project together as the end result. It sets out to create connections, to move past Zoom, to dig into details, to identify next steps, to not only change the streets that we are talking about in the program itself, but hopefully some of the systems, the policies, the practices at play, not to mention building relationships for future partnerships. One of the things that I love hearing, and that I think most colorfully was summed up by one of our very first participants, was, I realize it's not just an email address. Getting people out of their inbox and in person with one another to really sit down and address their common goals for some of the streets that they share responsibility over. In all the states that we have worked in, and we've worked in 6 states, we're on the hunt for our 7th state right now for 2026, we see some themes start to emerge. And the first is what we call the stages of collaboration. Every state, every community has gone through a semblance of these stages. The first is the need to take realistic stock of the situation, to actually admit that whether it is financial resources, staff time and capacity, changing land use needs, whatever the case may be, that there are problems that exist on the corridor, and pointing fingers or denying that they exist is not helping anybody. It is also taking realistic stock of the existing relationships at play. So this can look like acknowledging past times when maybe conversations didn't go well, or that projects didn't work as intended. But all of that is necessary to move on to step 2, which is acknowledging those past challenges in collaboration so that you can start finding solutions to them. Third is, if at first you don't succeed, I think probably every quick build that we've worked on at some point hit a spot where it felt like it wasn't going to go in the ground. We've had quick builds not go into the ground. I'm fine with that, because there are lessons to be learned from those experiences as well. But even those that went in the ground, at some point it felt like, oh, this is not going to happen. But those that went into the ground did something different. They went back to the table. They continued talking with one another. They tried to find a creative way through their existing challenges to get to that shared end goal. And I think one of my favorite phrases that came out of the program for this is don't take my first no as my last no. We were working with a state regional office who, when presented with the initial design plans, said, I can't do that. I cannot allow that to go into the ground and approve your permit. But let's work together and talk about what objectives you thought those design elements were achieving to see what might actually work for both of us to get you to those outcomes. And finally, we all went together. One of the great things about this program is that the Quick Build serves as a shared success, a shared experience, something they're working towards in joint ownership. And so I think it's really important to realize that it is something that everyone can go home feeling satisfied to know that they had a hand in. Some initial lessons that we have provided to state DOTs who have worked with us on these projects include things like creating new processes and policies to enable quick build demonstrations, recognizing that quick builds are unique. They're not necessarily going to work in the same format as your long-term or capital installations. Foster creativity and innovation, and this starts at the top. The most successful quick build design implementations in our experience have come when leaders have given their practitioners space to get creative and innovate with communities. Look for common ground between your interests and your agency partners, and don't underestimate the staff capacity and resources required. They're called quick build demonstrations. They're not called easy build demonstrations. They do take time and energy. They take resources. We'll get into budget in a second here with Ravina on some of the projects that we've looked at. But the funding that we provide for communities to get these into the ground is small, between $10,000 and $25,000 for each project. And they're able to do really amazing, incredible things with it. But that is only because of the staff time and the creativity that people put into finding resource support elsewhere to get these done. Luckily for us, we've had a few years since our first cohort here at Smart Path America, and we are seeing the ripple effects of these programs. So we know that a single quick build demonstration is not just about the street design changes. I'm happy to say that many of the quick builds that we have done are either still in some way or form in the ground or have informed permanent installations. But we have also seen changes at the state level, which was one of our original goals with this program, to support systems and policy change that would enable not only future quick build demonstrations, but hopefully get state DOTs thinking a little bit differently about how they do business. So for example, in Connecticut, they have worked to create things like sample quick build materials list for communities that want to know what kinds of things they can do. They have created a separate permitting process for quick build demonstrations. And they have really tried to institutionalize quick build demonstrations as part of the strategy that is available within Connecticut DOT, which then means it's available to all the communities that they serve. In Tennessee, the University of Tennessee, Knoxville is working to develop statewide guidelines for quick build projects, which is informed partially by what we did, partially what they are doing, but I think also just speaks to the general narrative shift within the state around some of this work. And finally, like I said, some of the projects still in the ground. So Nashville is still there. It looks a little different, maybe a little more beat up than it did when it first went in the ground, but still serving the needs of the community until they are able to get to a permanent design and installation. I'm going to hand it over to Ravina now to talk a little bit about what it looks like in practice for us, including some examples of our most recent quick build demonstrations. I do want to encourage you to use that question and answer box at the bottom of your screen for anything that piques your interest that you want to learn more about, and we'll try to get to as many as possible before the end of the session.
Perfect. Yes, please ask questions. This part of the presentation is just going to be a lot more details about our most recent Complete Streets Leadership Academies. So in 2024, we worked in Maryland with the Maryland Department of Transportation. And this year, in 2025, we worked in Kentucky with the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet. Let's start with Maryland. So MDOT invited us to conduct a Complete Streets Leadership Academy in Maryland, inspired by the 2023 academies across Alaska, Tennessee, Connecticut, and California. The state DOT was really excited about testing the demonstration project approach, but using this approach to to really kick off their statewide Complete Streets program. Um, MDOT picked three locations in three different districts. I'm not sure how familiar folks in this call are with state DOTs, but most state DOTs are divided into regions or districts or some sort of geographic distinction between their different areas. So engineers working on one part of a state will probably not be working on another part of the state. These districts tend to be pretty siloed. And so to cut across those different lines, MDOT chose three jurisdictions located in three different districts. This let us work with the town of Bel Air, the city of Hagerstown, Howard County, as well as MDOT headquarters and the district offices across three different state highway administration teams. Other partners involved in this project were a regional MPO, but for the most part, the 2024 Complete Streets Leadership Academy was mostly MDOT and the three jurisdictions. And I know you've all been wondering, what do quick builds look like? Here's some excellent examples. First, we have Bel Air, Maryland. This is a pretty small community, only about 10,000 people in the town. And one of their main street is a state highway. So it's just a couple of lanes, not too fast, not too wide, but very, very confusing, as you can see in this intersection. The entrance to their downtown is a five-way intersection where during our walk on it, we observed multiple drivers just take wrong turns because the intersection was illegible to them. So with a pretty low cost of materials, only about $12,000, the city and the town and the MDOT district worked together to simplify the intersection for cars, as well as upgrade the pedestrian crossings. The city had been the city and state had been installing some permanent crosswalks, but the demonstration project was an opportunity to try highlighting a couple of more crossings, to close a left turn, and to install speed cushions, which you can see on the bottom left. Speed cushions were a new technology for MDOT, and so the demonstration project offered the state an opportunity to test this new material. All of the projects included before and after speed studies. So we found a 7 mile per hour reduction of speeds on Main Street, due in large part to the effectiveness of the speed cushions. Hagerstown, Maryland, is in the northwest of the state, and US 40, also known as Dual Highway, runs into the downtown where it splits into two parallel highways. Some challenges on this site include speeding, mid-block crossings, and a pretty poor standard of crosswalk for pedestrians right at the start of the historic downtown area. So the focus of this project was to slow down the speeds of drivers as they're entering this historic downtown, and to maintain those speeds as they're exiting the downtown and entering back into where the highway feels more like a highway. This was a more expensive and more extensive project. As you can see from the photos, there were a lot of delineators installed to add some visual friction, as well as testing the speed cushions. Something that I want to highlight about this demonstration project is that the installation of speed cushions, of hardened center lines, were all new to the city. And so the state crews were installing the materials. Department of Public Works staff got to observe how these materials were installed. The plan was for MDOT to purchase these materials and then give them to the city afterwards. So the participating jurisdictions can now reuse these speed cushions in different places in their community. And now that the city staff has observed these speed cushions being installed by the state, they know how to do it themselves going forward. I think that's a really great example of a demonstration project being a learning opportunity in some surprising skills as well. The third jurisdiction to participate in the 2024 Complete Streets Leadership Academy was Howard County, Maryland. Um, this this site was chosen in part because of an upcoming pedestrian safety improvement project on US 1. This is a corridor that's been marked on the state's high energy network and is slated for improvement in the near future. And so the county wanted to use this location to test out some of those improvements. This demonstration project installed a multi-use path on an auxiliary lane. This is a location where there's a lot of apartments, a lot of people walking to the bus stop, a lot of people walking to work, and no sidewalks. And so by converting the auxiliary lane, it provided a buffer for people who were walking on this road to do so with more comfort and more safety. So the data collection did find a speed reduction of 5 miles per hour. The real focus was on the surveys, both online and intercept surveys, as well as some testimonials that found that the perceived safety and comfort for people walking and biking increased without impacting traffic. This team was able to work really closely with business owners along the corridor to maintain access to their driveways. In fact, through those conversations, the county found that some of the original placements of these delineators were not quite in the right location. There are a lot of car-centric and like truck-centric businesses on this site. So there are a lot of deliveries that happen, and a couple of the turn radii weren't quite right. But since this is a demonstration project, MDOT could go out and move the delineators to better fit the needs of folks who are driving in and out of those lots. So there were a lot of lessons learned with this program, and a lot went really well. As you saw, all the projects were installed. Data collection occurred both before and after, and relationships were built throughout the process, which was really cool to see. A couple of things in particular really led to this success. First off, it is impossible to overstate how important MDOT was to this process. From headquarters, from the district offices, everybody was showing up and knowing that this is what we are here to do. There was no hesitation in making decisions. Some leaders were, in particular, really good at, if calling out if anyone has any questions, if anyone's hitting any roadblocks, call me, email me, I will figure it out. And just having those clear lines of communications, those clear roles, having those leaders really step up and say, this is how we're going to go with this process, really let this happen, especially on especially on a fast timeline. As I mentioned before, everybody involved was really committed to this work. It is not, let's see, you do not always see everybody who needs to be involved be sold on the value of a demonstration project. But the folks who were necessary to implementing this project were also really eager to try this approach, to work with each other and to learn from the other teams as well. As I mentioned, you know, state department districts don't necessarily work in each other's locations, but by getting to be in the same room together, they got to learn from each other's best practices and support each other as well. We saw the use of existing relationships to take a project from good to great really shone through, where we saw, Howard County's project was a very long distance that the demonstration project was able to cover. That was in no small part because of the strength of the relationships between the county and the state DOT. They were very familiar with each other. They worked together very closely, and they set up recurring meetings. Every Friday they're keeping this project moving forward. The willingness to learn and try new things is essential to any academy. And there was a really great recognition that success is shared. We ended this program with individual interviews with each participant, and no one took any of the credit for themselves. Everyone was sharing the kudos with their colleagues. And then finally, the installation of a quick build is not the last step. As with Howard County making the adjustments, all of the cities taking the time and resources to measure the impacts. Now the Howard County project is going to be informing the permanent improvements. The Bel Air project, part of it is still in the ground because closing that one turn just made so much sense for the city. Um, there were some challenges, of course. As with most projects, timing, staffing, and funding were constraints. We saw in particular the the staffing and timing constraints really determined how extensive a jurisdiction's outreach, engagement, and surveying could be. Um, while demonstration projects are often a great way to get a community involved in transportation design, with the constraints of MDOT's work on the state highways, there was less room for that community-based creativity to really shine through in these demonstration projects. I think that there are pros and cons to that approach, but it should be known going in. And with that, there were some pretty strict guardrails from MDOT in terms of what was allowed, what was encouraged, and what were non-starters. This again really allowed the project to be implemented quite quickly and without much roadblocks. But a lot of that was because the projects were within the guidelines that MDOT had pre-established. So what's next? Um, Maryland Department of Transportation is continuing their demonstration projects. They have 6 sites that they chose this past year that are based in crash history. They're using the speed cushions and building on their learning, testing how those fare in winter weathers, and they're continuing to collect data to measure the impacts of these different strategies. Even more recently, we were in Kentucky for the 2025 Complete Streets Leadership Academy. And this is an aerial image of Winchester, where we had our in-person workshop. The participants in this year's Complete Streets Leadership Academy were the cities of Bowling Green, Moorhead, and Winchester. The state DOT, the state Kentucky Transportation Cabinet was involved, both the headquarters and the different district offices. And there were many other local partners involved in this program. This included local residents, an NPO, Kentucky Department of Public Health. We saw, city staff and the public works side. We saw council members involved. There were a lot of different backgrounds of the folks involved in this program. So just going through a couple of examples here, Bowling Green was led by their MPO. This was this was a partnership between this KYTC, the Metropolitan Planning Organization, and the city. And this team, kind of like in Howard County, was larger, worked together very well and very closely with very frequent meetings, and that allowed them to figure out that they could stretch their budget across 2 different project sites. The first is Small House Road and Scottsville Road, where a lot of uh, pedestrian safety improvements were needed. This includes crosswalks, bump outs, so that the crossing distance would be lesser. But the city was able to use the timing of their regular intersection updates to actually install some permanent ramps, sidewalk extensions, and pedestrian call buttons on this site. So this is a cool example of using a demonstration project to spark some permanent change. Bowling Green's second site was Morgantown Road, which is a location where the existing sidewalk disappears in front of an apartment building and on the way to some essential shopping. But the shoulder is quite wide here. So the team put uh, rubber, rubber curb stops and delineators to mark off the curb as for pedestrians, and are anticipating installing some paint to help differentiate that space as well. This team conducted a walk audit of this area, came back with some pretty harrowing video of how fast folks drive next to this shoulder. And they have some good data counting the number of folks who are walking and biking, who will benefit from these improvements. Next up is Moorhead. Their focus was originally US 60. This is an example of a demonstration project where, though our goals are generally, safety improvements, our real goals are improving relationships between local jurisdictions and state DOTs, because that's what's going to make the change more effective and more permanent. This is a place where, folks were not necessarily on the same page all the time. But because of the shared commitment to improving safety, they did manage to come back to the table time and time again, to continue to work and find a way to test a new safety strategy in this area. So they have some crosswalks, some bump outs, and then to the left an extension of a pedestrian plaza. Then last but not least, Winchester. So this is a location where some local residents really took the lead. We have some Winchester just has some transportation experts who live in this neighborhood, and were able to really inspire their city to work closely with their county bike ped organization, and to work with their KYTC district to upgrade some intersections. As with Bowling Green, this was a really cool example of a city installing a permanent improvement sparked by a quick build demonstration project. This intersection didn't have curb ramps, it didn't have crosswalks. There are temporary curb ramps that you can use for a demonstration project, but it would have eaten into most of the team's budget. So instead, the county and city were able to use their own funds to install permanent curb ramps, as the team is continuing to move forward on their demonstration projects to include bump outs and crosswalks in this area. The 5 themes across this program are quite similar to others, but really reinforcing and adding more texture to what we know. The knowledge, skills, and training aspect of an academy is really important, because this will bring familiarity of complete streets, of demonstration projects, to all of the folks involved. And we saw that people's existing background with complete streets really shaped their ability, really shaped their interest in their involvement with the program and with the demonstration project. Kentucky has a complete streets policy, and they had recently conducted a lot of statewide trainings. And some folks who participated in the academy had been part of those trainings, while others who were necessary for the project maybe hadn't attended those trainings and were unfamiliar with these concepts. As we've seen in the past, relationships and coordination is central to this, such that the demonstration project is an opportunity to work together on a shared goal, on a shared activity, and to find that common ground. While at the same time, folks with the existing relationships, existing coordination processes, are able to do much more in the time frame that they're given. The Winchester and Bowling Green teams in particular really showed off how quick build projects can be used for lasting results. In fact, a lot of these permanent changes were made before the quick builds were even in place. The community selected for this program, the 2025 CSLA, were selected in large part because they were smaller communities. A much earlier iteration of Smart Growth America's program actually originated in Lexington, so it was cool to come back. But Lexington as a city has a lot more staff and a lot more capacity than Winchester or Morehead. And so this was an opportunity for KYTC to really get to see what is needed from the state to work with these small jurisdictions. We see with the MPO that having this additional structure can be a great benefit. You have a larger team, you have more staff, but there are cons in that side as well. That's potentially more roadblocks in your way. And then finally, as always, knowing and navigating the system. These demonstration projects, if they're new, we are all figuring this out together for the first time. But now that we have, let's write it down. And so somebody else in a different community can do a demonstration project as well. The projects are being installed in fall 2025 and spring 2026 for maximum data collection. The teams are going to measure those outcomes of the project and continue to share their lessons learned across Kentucky and beyond. Thank you so much. We are really happy to get to share all this information with you and would love to answer some questions.
Great. Thanks for letting us share our experience with quick builds. I warned you, we really love quick builds here at Smart Growth America. We think they are powerful tools in terms of changing street design, but also changing hopefully some hearts and minds along the way and maybe informing some new best practices. So yeah, please feel free to drop those questions in the question and answer box and we can get started.
Yeah, I'm only seeing 2 questions so far, and you guys can see them on your end, right?
Yeah. So should we just jump in?
Yeah, just jump in, go ahead, since there's only 2.
Okay. Yeah. So I have not done any quick builds directly on a college campus. I do know that we see varying levels of flexibility when it comes to METCD interpretations, I will say, or local design guidance, depending on whether it's the state or the local. Local streets are often able, in our experience, to be more nimble or maybe innovative in the types of materials or the types of designs that they're able to do then on a state road. But I will say we've been impressed with the number of times the state DOT, upon seeing something done either on a local road through this experience or done by another state through this experience, considers something that maybe they haven't done before. Bowling Green and Morehead are both very much so college towns, and that was a consideration in their site selection and design. Ravina, do you want to think about, speak to any of that, the role the universities played?
Yeah, I think with this program, in particular, the summertime, you know, workflow, made it a little bit more difficult to engage students the way that we would have liked to. But it did put a bit of pressure on the timeline to try to get this in the ground before students come back to campus. Morehead's population more than doubles in the fall. They're still in the process of installing their demonstration project. But they did kind of like a trial version before their full paint, where a bunch of local elementary and middle school students did a homecoming related painting installation. So that was just a cool way for the street to reflect the identity of the local university.
Great. This question I'm handing straight over to Urbina because she is all things data for us. So the use of technology to gather data and maybe some creative ways that we've seen people gather data as well.
Absolutely. So radar guns is a great way to measure speeds. Your city could have tubes for traffic counts. My favorite technology is a lawn chair and a clipboard, and some volunteers, students, some neighbors, to go out and count the number of folks that you see. Shoes is another good technology. Go and do intercept surveys. Just talk to the people who are using this facility, and ask them how they feel. On a less glib note, we see ArcGIS has a program called Survey 123, and that lets people submit photos of uh, what they're seeing, where they see it. It's a good tool for like walk audits. Similarly, just a Survey Monkey sort of survey data. But I would really strongly encourage this kind of pencil, paper, and shoes approach to data collection. You really can't beat that.
And I think too, being open to having data come from unusual sources. So, for example, in Howard County, one of the ways that they heard about the feedback necessary to adjust their existing design in pretty much real time was hearing from the businesses that they had trouble receiving their mail. It turned out that the Postal Service was unable to navigate the changes in order to reach the street front mailboxes. And the Postal Service's answer was to stop delivering the mail. And so working with the businesses to make sure that, and the Postal Service to make sure that they had, but they wouldn't have known that if they hadn't been open and listening to the business owners along the route as well. But yeah, I think old school sometimes is the hidden gem with these. I would also say people of all ages, you know, get kids out there with a radar gun or without a radar gun, and they'll tell you walk audits are incredibly useful, not only for the project itself, but in terms of our other objectives of fostering partnerships or improving relationships. We've had a number of times where when we bring out the state DOT to do the walk audits in the communities, this is the first time that that staff member has been in that location for a number of years or possibly ever to really experience that route as so many people in the community do. And even that can lead to some real-time changes. We've seen, a state DOT staffer pull out his phone, get the signal timing change started and process started and kicked off that was needed. Conversations about curb cuts and accessibility happening in real time, things like that. So don't underestimate some of those low-key technology. A question here about maintenance and securing additional funding to maintain quick build projects. Ravina, do you want to talk about some of the themes that we hear on maintenance?
Yeah, absolutely. I think first, just remember that your maintenance team can be part of your core team in doing these projects. These demonstration projects are learning opportunities, so that includes opportunities for your maintenance staff to test new ways of doing things. We see concerns around maintenance often kind of limit the timeline of a project, especially with like winter weather, that sort of concern. But as with MDOT, you can use a demonstration project to test and see, how does a snow plow operator navigate a speed cushion, and if it doesn't work, then we know that now. Um, in terms of you know, maintaining a quick build that is maybe in the ground for longer than a few months, that's often going to be flex post replacement. Just kind of having a stock of delineators that can be reinstalled, um, and like potentially touch ups, but they do stay in the ground for quite some time. Um, yeah, I think for maintenance, really just making sure that maintenance is actually at the table when you're having these conversations, and a collaborative brainstorming thought partner in this work.
And they can be an unsuspected champion as well for some of this. Some of the um, practitioners in the room might assume that maintenance and operations would be against or have concerns about certain designs. We find that sometimes when they're at the table in the room, their concern is just not knowing what's going to happen or what that change is going to be so that they can't prepare for it. But if they know it's coming, if they are part of the process, their concerns are usually addressed. A question here about timeline, especially before quick build should be in place before a more permanent build is planned and replaces it. We would love to see quick builds in for as long as possible. We've had projects in for a very short while, like 48 hours short while. I would not recommend that. But I do think that as long as the materials are standing to the test of time, as long as the community is still enjoying the benefits and quick build is serving its purpose. The longer you can leave it in, the better, not only for safety, but obviously data collection improves and things like that. Um, the Lexington example that Ravina mentioned, which I think went in the ground in 2018, still has elements from it in the ground right now, because they haven't completely gone through a permanent project installation. So that is far more years than I would like to consider since 2018, but it gives you a sense. For the Howard County project, they knew that that was going to be a planned permanent change. It helped inform the design, similar for some of the communities that we worked with in Tennessee. And so it really varies. But in my opinion, the longer it can be in the ground and still be functioning safely, the better. Ravina?
Yeah. And then the last question about the two-way bike track, those were regular flexible delineators. They were just brand new. And so that is why they might have looked, shinier or more solid, than, the flexible delineators that are in my neighborhood anyway. Yeah. And then in terms of timeline, something interesting about just data collection around quick builds is 48 hours is not enough because that is not even a full business week. People's behavior changes based on their environments. So if you want to get good data on how the quick build actually affects the flow of traffic, people's commute times, the feelings of safety or feelings of confusion or clarity around navigating an intersection, it'll take a couple of months for people to get used to a change. And then once they do, then you'll have a good picture of how people are actually enjoying or not enjoying this new space.
I'm not seeing any other questions. Obviously, feel free to reach out to Ravina or myself if you have questions or comments about quick builds or want to learn more. I dropped some links in the chat to the more in-depth case studies that we've done on each of our experiences in the state, as well as Dangerous by Design. But please just stay in touch if there's ever any way that we could support your work or if you have an interest in learning more about ours. Thank you. Nick, I'll pass it back to you.
Sounds good. Yeah, thank you so much, Heidi and Ravina. Really appreciate it. Great presentation. Some really exciting work going on. And yeah, feel free to reach out to the presenters and definitely feel free to check out our Center for Pedestrian Bicyclist Safety website, sign up for our newsletter, check out future webinars as well. And thanks everybody for the time today.